Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Is this going to be a cameras off panel?
I would love to have our cameras on if we could.
It's not allowing me to do my camera on.
Yeah, me either.
The host said no.
Really? Huh. Okay, let me try and figure that out.
Yeah, it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay. I didn't take any action to do that. Let's figure that out.
No cameras?
Anyone happen to know where that setting is in Zoom?
Nope.
Huh.
Who's the host?
That would be me. There we are. Try now. Hey.
Hey.
Sweet, thank you.
Very welcome. Let's see who I got here.
I'll put my video back on in a sec. I just have to do a couple things real quick.
So who's excited to talk about rules?
I am.
Oh yeah. Jack, I can't tell where you go to school at all.
I make it subtle this time, you know?
Eli, are you gonna be outside? Because the lighting's a little weird. Just wondering.
Oh yeah, I'm outside. I'm sorry. I'm in Las Vegas right now. I'm not actually like where I'm from, so it's been a long weekend.
So in the meantime, how's everyone's weekend?
Been good.
You guys have been watching all the other panels?
Yeah, I went to the panel yesterday about like apparel and sponsorships, and I really loved that one.
What'd you learn? I haven't actually attended like more than like one other panel, and only like in the background.
Juan, I think your audio got really low. I couldn't really hear you for a bit.
Ah, okay. That would explain it. What if I just talk louder?
Yeah,
That's better.
Mhm.
That's gonna be a problem because I'm not good at that. What about now? Is it any different?
That's a lot better.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that I haven't actually been watching many of the QuidCon panels.
That's fair. It's like a lot to take in, honestly. Like there's so much going on. It's a lot.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. Probably not the
So
best thing.
I should probably commit to a which QuidCon background then.
Oh, should we have that background? Is that a big thing?
No, if you don't have it, don't worry about it.
I just like using Zoom backgrounds. They're fun.
I thought yours was like animated because it kept changing. I didn't know you were like swapping through them.
Oh no, I'm just really indecisive.
I don't want to know what they are, but do you guys have like suggested rules.
But we're doing that already?
No, I just was curious, like, when we get to that point, do you have one like in mind?
I have something small in mind.
Okay. I put in that little block at the end of the document that had like some suggestions from the community. I pretty much just ripped those from a few Facebook posts, so they're not my ideas. Well, one of them's my idea, but so we'll talk about that at some point. I'm not sure where that will blend in, but we'll try to make it a little fluid. Did you guys all get put into the Slack?
Oh, I forgot about the Slack.
To be honest, I've never used Slack. I don't really know why we have it or what its purpose is, but I'm in it.
I've never used it either.
I don't think I'm in it, but
Well, if anything comes through it, Linnea or I should do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, there'll be questions and stuff, but one of us two should be able to find that, so you don't have to worry about it. But you guys don't use Slack. What do you guys use for like team communications?
Like for our Quidditch team,
Yeah.
my team uses Discord.
We use Messenger primarily.
Does it work for you in the college? Does it actually? We used to use Messenger, but we didn't like it, so we tried to upgrade. But it works for you.
I mean, it works fine. Like as long as everyone who's like as long as everyone's like paying attention, not like just muting the notifications, because occasionally it just like blows up when people are talking. But for the most part, yeah, it works fine.
Cool. All right, we'll just give them some time. Oh, we're at the time now. So I guess people are going to start showing up, but we'll just give it 2 or 3 minutes for extra people to just trickle in, and then we'll get started with some introductions, and I'll cover the goal of this panel. But yeah, let's just give it a couple minutes.
Yeah, feel free y'all to drop in the chat if you want to say hello or good morning to all of our wonderful panelists. That is a-okay. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Jeanette. Ooh, from Germany. Oh my God. No pressure or anything. Dang.
I wasn't nervous already.
Morning to you too, Tate.
while we're waiting, does anybody have any drinks that they're drinking? I, for one, am drinking coffee. Anybody else?
Good
I
old
just-
water.
I just got H2O.
Good, stay hydrated. We love that.
Alternating between water and coffee in my Appa avatar mug. Real proud of that one.
Love
Love
that.
Love
I have
it.
a Beatles mug drinking coffee.
Wonderful.
Little yellow submarine mug. Okay.
And
I was already really excited. So I kind of downed my water already.
oh man, if you have to pee in the middle, we're not gonna judge. It's fine. I
We'll
feel
see
like
what happens.
my mug has a bunch of birds on it. In case anybody was wondering, it's like the inappropriately named birds. Like we've got the red-billed oxpecker right here, the bearded tit. It's wonderful. I found this at a Goodwill. Truly incredible.
I forgot what that Macklemore song is called. Drifting. Anyway, okay, I think we're at a good time now. 3 minutes in, so let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Juan Martinez. I've played for Texas Cavalry and for the Austin Outlaws. I've done a little bit of management in between there. And this panel that we're going to have today is a conversation on the rule books, just rules in general, changes that we've seen throughout the mainly USQ. We will have a little bit of conversation around MLQ, but we've seen a lot of conversations that happen within Facebook groups, especially the AQD, American Quidditch Discussion Facebook group. And what tends to happen, we've all seen it, we've had these conversations before, is that a lot of the existing, largely community players, we see a lot of the same names having these discussions, and it's usually community or club members. And we wanted to have a conversation here. Linnea and I talked about it, being able to have a conversation about those topics, but centered on the collegiate experience. So only college players or recent college players would be involved in this discussion. So I myself am a club member, again, for Texas Cavalry, so I don't actually apply, but I'm just going to be here to sort of help facilitate this conversation. And Linnea, if you want to do an intro for yourself and give your background.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Linnea Schultz. My pronouns are she, her, hers. They're not showing up on my Zoom, which is unfortunate, but it's fine. So I started playing Quidditch in 2017. I'm currently a senior in college. I play for the Illinois State Firebirds. So roll birds there. And I also have played for MLQ Indianapolis Intensity, which has been wonderful. And yeah, I volunteer for MLQ and USQ, and I'm also the president of the Central Collegiate Quidditch Conference, which is super exciting. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Nice. Yeah, I forgot. I am part of the Texas Quidditch Conference, which was getting started before COVID hit. So not a lot of progress has been made there, but it's something that we're going to have come back when US Quidditch starts up their season again. So, and that's kind of how we had this idea start, was conference leaders talking about ways to include the collegiate players in these conversations. So let's go ahead and do an introduction of everybody on this panel. If Eden, if you want to kick off and just do a little bit about yourself, about your program and your experience.
All right. My name is Eden Sky Einhorn. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs. I'm a senior at Drexel University, and I'm currently our team's events coordinator. And last year I was our team's president. And I play beater.
Awesome. All right, Jonathan, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jonathan. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a keeper for the Macaulay Marauders in the Northeast. I'm only a sophomore. I've only been playing for like 7-ish months, so I don't have the same experience that a lot of these players have, but I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Jack, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jack. I'm a third year beater at UT. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I've been playing since my freshman year. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about rules.
Awesome. Eli?
Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so hi, my name is Eli. I'm a third year utility player from San Jose State, and my pronouns are he, him, his. And Last year I was SJSU's team president and captain.
All right, Megan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Orsak. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I go to Texas A&M. I'm a senior there. I've been playing Quidditch since my freshman year, and I've been on the leadership squad my junior and now this year. I'm vice president this year, and I was PR social media last year.
Sweet. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. We're super excited to have you here.
Yes, we are. Okay, so before we do all the actual discussion on the ideas that I have laid out, I did want to start with just a sort of high-level review of the last few years of the rulebook changes that we've had. Generally, what we're going to talk about today is Rulebook 14, or the most recent version of the rulebook, because it's had the most significant changes from a perspective of somebody who's been playing for years. If you've only been playing for 7 months, like Jonathan, like you don't have that same context, but it's still an interesting perspective to have. If I go all the way back to Rulebook 11, I think that's probably the significant one for me, because I started playing before there was a reset rule. That was implemented in there. It really changed the way the game was played. So if you can imagine Quidditch without a reset rule, just wild games that you could have one possession last 8 minutes, for example, in a championship game. And then in Rulebook 12, the notes I've got here is, we changed the layout of the field. We removed the pill-shaped field. So what everyone now recognizes is just the square shape with lines across. That's when we first got rid of that pill, which was, I played in that era. I honestly don't think I could tell you what the actual rules were around that pill, that line, that boundary line. So the removal of it to me was a nice clarification, simplification for the game. And that was also the season where we had a lot of clarification provided for third bludger, rules around third bludger, and how beater game was massively impacted. The notes I have for Rulebook 13 were basically we had no significant updates to the rules. There's some clarification on the keeper reset rule, but if any of you can really walk me through that, that'd be impressive, because I think those are really only known by keepers. So maybe one of you can, but otherwise there's a lot of clerical updates. And let's check this chat, because somebody might be correcting me, but yeah, maybe Rulebook 11 was the boundaries, but so this most recent rulebook update, I think, is the big one where we're going to have a lot more conversation. So we have the change to the starting procedure. We have a change to the end game procedure. We have the implementation of 2-arm tackling. And then there's some more, compared to the rest of those, what I would consider hoop placement, or what I would consider smaller changes, such as hoop placement, tagging in points, and changes to the carding system. So with all of that said, what I would like to get, and I guess we'll just go ahead and start with, let's go with Eli. With the changes that were implemented in this most recent rulebook, how do you feel that impacted your collegiate program? Is it something that you guys are waiting for the next rulebook? Are you a little more reactive? What impact does that have to the way you guys would have practiced or just implemented your team?
Yeah, so San Jose State's kind of a small team, so kind of having the whole aspect of practicing with a whole bunch of people is something that's fairly new, because I remember when I was team president, just the whole idea of training everybody and making sure they understood the basics of the rule book was something that's super important. So having all these changes is something that's really interesting, because it affects the way that we kind of bring people in, because a lot of the people from a program are freshmen. So just kind of introducing them into the whole aspect of tackling is one of the main things that I try to get out of my players. So it's just getting used to the basics, because once you master the basics, it's pretty much smooth sailing from there. But different changes to the rule books always affects the college experience, because you never know what kind of player or what kind of athletic background you may get from somebody.
Okay, that's interesting. So do you feel like the changes make it harder to recruit new players?
No, I don't think it's harder. I think it makes it easier, because it gives a more clear outline of what's allowed and what's not allowed in such a heavy contact sport. So I don't think it makes recruitment harder in a sense.
Eden, what do you think?
I think that like with the rule book changes, like, so I feel like a lot of them, like, I feel like theoretically, if we were allowed to have practice, then like our start of the year would have most definitely probably been like centered around like learning and like how to adjust to these new rules, like the new brooms up procedure and the 2-arm tackling. But like either way, Drexel's team, like we were like a lot of like our players last year had graduated, so we're already like in like a like transition period of like adjusting to that change. So I feel like it would have been like that would have just been like in like with like the
Yeah, there's a
like
lot of transition moments in there that you incorporate to your program, right?
yeah, like we were in a transitional period, so I feel like we would have like definitely had to like teach the returning players, like get ourselves adjusted to that in the beginning, as well as like, but I feel like because like one of our goals this year would have been like recruitment to like early on, then we would have like, I feel like for incoming freshmen, it would be like easier in a way because like they aren't like adjusting to new brooms up or like new two-handed tackling, 2-arm tackling. Like they would still have to like adjust to playing Quidditch in general, which is like hard for freshmen and new players, but it but like
So,
yeah, I just
and
like
I don't want to cut you off, but I find that interesting, that point interesting in that I think you've both mentioned it so far, is that it's offering you a little more clarity on some of this, or making it easier for newer players to join. Like you would have to do some transition or some training or retraining for existing and returning players. But within the changes that we're talking about, 2-arm tackling, the starting procedure, the end game procedure, for returning players, my perspective is that those are significant changes. But for newer players, do you think, and I'm going to throw this over to Megan, do you think that this would make it easier to onboard new players, or what's that balance? Is it easier to get new players and harder to retrain those older players? Or are they not that big a deal? Just that kind of conversation.
Yeah, so it poses an interesting question, I think, because I think existing players first and foremost have to know what's going on and have to get adjusted to it to be able to show the newer players what's going on. And so I think that like while having new players know what's going on, and it might be easier for them to just not know what the rules were before, easier for them to just jump on. I think it does, like for me, these rules are significant. I would have to change a lot of the strategy that and a lot of the existing players, we would have to get together and figure out how we would like go about it. And so I do think that it is pretty significant and like for the existing players.
Okay. Jack, I'll throw this over to you. Is there, and you can answer any of the previous questions that we've talked about or previous points, sure. But for a program like UT where, you know, you have it's highly competitive, everyone recognizes that. This conversation about onboarding new players and bringing them up to speed versus just, you know, retraining your existing game, like how big of an impact does it have on a program like UT? And yeah, just feel free to talk about anything else we've brought up so far.
Yeah, sure. I really love this question. And in my perspective, I think changes to the rule book are, I want to draw an analogy to like a video game like League of Legends. You know, every season there might be a new patch, and these patches might be significant, like, oh, you have to, you can tackle with 2 arms now instead of 1. That's pretty significant. But the basic dynamics of the game and the mechanics of the game are the same. So from year to year, I think at UT, and I can only project what would have happened if there were no COVID, and we had like full recruitment, full practices. But I believe that we would have continued to just teach the basics of the game first. I don't think we even introduced tackling until we get the new recruits familiar with, just holding a broom with one hand, or like catching a ball with the broom between their legs. So it would have been a later, like an adjustment later in the season when the players are already more experienced. So I think in that regards, it wouldn't have been that significant. But later down the season when we have already trained the new players and they're kind of seasoned, we would have definitely changed the approach into how to win tournaments and win big tournaments like regionals and nationals by focusing more and more on those beginning and end game procedures, which I really love. I really love the new changes.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean the change to starting procedure affects 10 seconds of the game. The ending procedure doesn't change too much about your gameplay. It just changes the clerical part of it. So the two-arm tackling is something that you would actually like if you imagine just an average practice, you're not usually practicing your starting procedure very much at all. So it feels significant in that it looks so different than what we're used to, but maybe it's not actually that significant. But with the two-arm tackling being the major thing that you'd actually have to practice, which you said you don't introduce till later on. Jonathan, I'm curious for you, like you said you've played for 7 months. Is that during the pandemic, or did you get like 7 months of actual play in there?
So I started the very beginning of my freshman year, which was like around September-ish, and then I played until the pandemic hit, which was like March. So I didn't go to too many tournaments. I went to like the Northeast Regional, and I like played in a few tournaments like here and there.
Most of your experience is practice related.
A lot of my experience is practice, and being one of the new recruits that was first getting into the sport, having no clue how it worked. Regarding the rulebook change and regarding the change to starting an endgame procedure, I think it's going to put a lot more pressure and a lot more responsibility on leadership amongst the teams, because now it's not only their job to work with already existing players to help get new recruits understanding the basics of Quidditch. They also now have the burden of teaching the older players about the new rule changes and working with them to make sure that they have a proper grasp on it while also having a grasp on it themselves. Because from what I've seen amongst my own team, a lot of the focus right now during the pandemic has just been on trying to get the new recruits understanding the basics of Quidditch without really focusing too much on rule changes, because that's not going to affect the older players until later when we're actually allowed to play again.
So in the review of like prepping for this conversation, when you read those rule changes, did they sound like they were changes to you, or just new rules that you hadn't gotten to yet?
To me, it felt more like changes because I already had participated in so many like scrimmages and already tournament games that I was familiar with at least the starting procedure. Ending procedure, I was a little bit less concerned with because I didn't get affected by it too much with the whole 70-point cap thing. And like I focused most of my attention on playing as keeper and occasionally working as a seeker. But I feel like with the change from the starting procedure in particular, it just feels like a modification rather than something completely new, because you still have people chasing after a quaffle. You still have people chasing after bludgers. It's the same general premise, just without the risk of head-to-head collisions, which made me very anxious about having to potentially do brooms up. So I think the rule change regarding starting procedure in particular is one that I'm really fond of, because it makes it encourages participation on a part of the sport that I was more anxious about. Because as a freshman, I'm looking at these juniors and seniors running head on head against each other, racing for a ball. And I know without a doubt that I'm at least going to be nervous on that starting line, and that's going to affect my performance. But I feel like looking forward, when I can potentially see myself going for more brooms up, because I'm more confident now that I won't get hurt, and that's going to make me more confident in my play and in my overall attitude towards the game.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I have down here somewhere in my list of questions is I'd like to have a conversation on essentially what the direction of rule changes should be. A lot of the conversation that I like to participate in is conversations about, you know, the rules should favor safety over competitiveness. You know, I watch football. There's a lot of conversation about rules in there that favor an offense over defense. So I think I want to merge what your feedback there was. This rule change was a positive because it makes a certain, what a lot of people see as a dangerous play into a much safer one while still maintaining a lot of that competitive spirit. Is there like a set of rules that anybody would be interested in seeing along those lines that either makes things safer or just improves the game in some way that is sort of outside the scope of the rules that we've already seen or rule changes that we've seen? And I guess raise your hand if you have that one, because that's sort of a broad question.
Oh,
All right, Jack, take it away.
sure. I wasn't sure if I should like physically raise my hand or use the Zoom button, but
Sorry about that.
yeah, from the forums, I've read a lot of discussion about face beating and how that is a very, potentially dangerous and even like life-threatening like action. So in my opinion, I think there should be more restrictions against face beating. I think that if, let's say you're like 5 yards away from someone within 5 yards and you like just like aim straight for the head, that should not really be encouraged or even allowed. But on the other side of things, I don't know if you can like just broadly ban face beats because it's something that it's kind of random. I know my fellow beaters can attest. Like most of my face beats have been like unintentional because I'm just like aiming for their body and they like duck down or something like that. So I think like intentional and egregious face beats should be uh, more like caught and like like maybe even a red card should be applied for uh, like really intense ones. Does anyone else have any opinions on that? I think Eden has an opinion.
Yeah, as a fellow beater, like I can attest that like face beats, like a lot of the time when like if I accidentally face beat someone, like it's basically always like immediately followed by an oh my god, I'm so sorry about that. So but like so yeah, I feel like there should be like a way, like there should like be a way to like try to like discourage face beats, but then at the same time it's like there's also like the challenge of like the refs would have to use their judgment of like was that like an was that like intentional or was that an accident? So like I feel like that's where things get tricky, but I feel like if there's any way to like prevent or discourage face beats, then that like would be like a great rule addition.
Yeah, as a beater, I can attest to all of these things. And it is interesting to see like where the line might be drawn in that question. And also just kind of going off of that, I do think that safety is like really is important. An important thing to think about in Quidditch. I know my parents came and watched me at a tournament we had at A&M, and somebody broke their collarbone, somebody's pinky on my team was at a 90-degree angle, and my parents were like, why are we letting you do this? And I mean, of course, it's a sport and things that comes with all sports, but I think that there is a question of like raising safety concerns in some aspects. And so I do think that certain things like face beating, like intentional face beating, and rules like that geared toward safety, like just not blatantly like going and hurting somebody would be nice, but it is kind of hard to say where we draw the line because sometimes it's an accident. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Yeah, go for it, Eli.
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation because as a chaser, the whole perspective is switched because a lot of the plays that I do is kind of the whole point of being the chaser is trying to avoid the beats, but like they're saying, face beats are kind of unavoidable in a sense, or just raising the concerns of safety because there always is that possibility that somebody may get hurt. So just kind of having more clarification for people that may not be aware of the potential dangers that could occur from face beats, because we all know that since this is a big contact sport, things are going to happen, but you're not always sure what's going to be the impact. Because my freshman year in a tournament in Los Angeles, there was a really bad incident to where somebody got a concussion from that. And ever since then, it kind of just weighs my awareness whenever I do plays and stuff. Always make sure to kind of adjust the way that I approach a play. Just kind of always think about the different possibilities and stuff. Because even though I'm not a beater, I just always kind of look to see like maybe what's the beater thinking, because they always have the main responsibility of knowing when to hold back and when not to, because there's always that balance of not knowing if you may hurt somebody or not. So just kind of having more clear guidelines on what's the potential dangers of face beating could also help. Plus Jack's point of also maybe applying a code to that, because it is an important thing to warn people that even though face beating is something that's unavoidable, you do have to worry about the potential safety of others, because that can have a lasting impact outside of the sport of Quidditch, not just in the game or tournament that you're playing in at that current time.
For sure, yeah. So this feels like a good place to kind of transition into, let's talk about what do you guys think about like different tiers in USQ for college teams? So we all know we have, you know, teams like Texas who they're so far up there, they're competing for the title. And then you have, you know, teams who are really just there for fun. So what do y'all think about that? And how do the rules kind of apply to that? Are they going to be more rigid? Can they be flexible? What do y'all think? Jonathan, you want to start?
Sure. I'd say this as my own perspective and my very limited perspective, because I don't know how a two-tiered system would work or how teams of different calibers play against each other outside of the teams that my own team has gone against and the games that I've watched between other teams. But I personally don't like the idea of having a two-tiered system because I feel like it's an unnecessary divide, and a divide that kind of has some potentially negative implications with it, because having teams that are playing competitively and having teams that are playing for fun can add sort of a like an implication of, oh, these teams aren't good enough to be competitive, so they're just doing it for fun. And I don't want to run the risk of that even happening. And I feel like with having the rule set as it is, adding different rules for different tiers of play would just create a form of separation between teams and between the goals of the teams, because I personally find the fun in Quidditch being like completely intertwined with the sport itself, and the rules act as a sort of guide for how to have fun and how to have fun safely within the sport, because it's Quidditch. It's almost an inherently fun sport to play. Adding specific rules that promote or disincentivize competitiveness or fun just feel almost unnecessary, and trying to create a form of separation between teams who feel that they want to go for a national championship versus teams who want to just have fun making cool plays or getting epic beats. It just feels unnecessary in my opinion, but I don't know. How do y'all feel?
Sure, yeah. Megan, what are your thoughts?
So at A&M, we did have my freshman year. We had an intramural Quidditch league, and of course, it looks a little bit different. We couldn't play other teams, but I think that is a good balance of like bringing fun instead. And then we also had a team who traveled and played competitively. That might be more of a solution. Of course, it does kind of stink that you're just playing against your own players, but I could see if there was a two-tiered system that there would be different rules, because there are some rules that might discourage, like I know maybe two-arm tackling might discourage, or it being like full-on contact might discourage some people who really want to get into this just for fun, the camaraderie. But that's kind of just my take on it. And I could see a two-tiered system, but I think that there would have to go like a lot of thought into how that would play out, and if there are different rules, and just the logistics of that.
Yeah. So before we continue on, we got a question. For the division divide, what about teams that barely qualify for nationals and lose instantly and would like to play with similarly leveled teams? It's tough to keep a program going when losing year after year. So as we just continue through this, I'll let you guys continue to speak on that. I don't know who's next. You want to go, Eli?
Yeah, so I guess for this, San Jose State has had chances to qualify for nationals. I remember my freshman year, we qualified for nationals as one of the last teams, but didn't get to go because of a variety of factors. But I feel that it is tough to keep a program going when you do have that aspect of losing year after year. And I don't have the experience of speaking on behalf of like Jack and Megan, who have had that competitive experience of like playing for national titles and stuff like that. But I feel like having a two-tiered system does have its benefits. It does encourage more people to come out because you can't have a system where you can segue players in from intramural to the competitive scene, and just having them understand what it is that Quidditch entails and making sure that they feel comfortable in that space is something that can lead to having more teams become more competitive, because you have that expanded roster and more opportunities to see what kind of different people you have, and therefore translate to whatever tournament you're going to be a part of. So I think it's a good idea to have a two-tier system, but there's also the fact of having new people in that, like new people coming to the sport, like Jonathan, that may not know like what it's like to have that whole competitive scene, or talk about what exactly it means to compete, like play Quidditch competitively, because different sports have, I guess in my experience, different levels of competition or competitive play. So just making sure that there's a balance between the two can help players ease more into the sport.
Definitely. Eden or Jack, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say that like I agree that like I feel like it like depends on like how it's like handled, because like I was like thinking about it, and at first I was like, I feel like two-tier, like my initial like thought for that, like it almost like remind me of like the difference between like USQ official and USQ unofficial teams. And then when the question got asked about like for teams that barely qualify for nationals and lose instantly, like I like my team, like Drexel, we got a spot for the open division of nationals. So I feel like maybe like if there was like a tier like system like that, maybe like something like tournaments with an open division would be like a good way to implement it, because like if the pandemic hadn't happened, like we still would have loved to like go to nationals and like have the opportunity to play, even if we would have like lost. But and still, even like throughout the year, like we've gone to tournaments and we've played against like pretty strong teams. Like I think there are some teams that were ranked in the top 20 that we played against, and even like if we didn't win and even if we lost terribly, it's still like good experience to get to play against those teams.
Definitely. Yeah. And Jack, as kind of a more competitive team, what do you think? Does this even apply to you? Like how do you feel?
Yeah, I think everyone has made really great points so far. And my perspective on this is that I think there are more benefits to a two-tier system than a one-tier system. Just because for the end of the season, like national tournament, I feel like it'd be more inclusive to have two tiers that more teams can qualify for. And you know, as far as implementation for this, I think this can be something that either USQ divides up themselves, or the teams can apply to be either in the first tier or the second tier based off of what their goals are. You might be a team that's just newly formed and you're still learning the game, and if that's the case, you might want to apply for tier 2 because you want to give your players a chance to compete for uh, a title, but in a setting where people, you have a more possibility of doing that. And if you're a more experienced team afterwards, then you apply for tier 1 and go for there. But I also I don't know if it's necessary to divide the rules up based off the 2 tiers. I think it might just be based off years of experience, especially for college teams, because there's teams with wide range
Feeling
of
is
experience.
you're not opposed to 2 different tiers, but there's no reason to have a different rule set between the different tiers.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have that kind of dichotomy, because I feel like the 2 tiers is just for the end of season.
Right. You'd still have
During the season, you can
tournaments.
still play like across tiers or whoever you want, and having a different rule set would really complicate that, I feel like.
Okay. I do want to move on to reffing after this, but we got a question from Kenny Chilton. And I feel like it's very related to what Jonathan Kogan was saying. So Jonathan, if you want to read the question out or and then just give it an answer, and then we'll move on to reffing after that.
Yeah, sure. So Kenny's asking, the last time that USQ had a divisional split, UT won the D1 and SHSU won the D2. Both these programs are highly successful now. Do you feel that a split could help bolster programs who compete in D2, or would it just make them feel less competitive? So in my opinion, I think that based on what everyone said, I'm sort of changing what I said before, and I'm more in favor of the 2-tiered system now that I've heard more experienced players' opinions on it, because I realize more of the benefits, and I think that winning, especially even in a lower tier, would be very helpful. I know that when I competed in sports in high school, I wasn't always playing in the highest division tier, just because of the competition near my high school. And when we did win, it was still very rewarding, even if it was at a lower tier. I think that with having 2 divisions and 2-tiered system, winning becomes a better incentive, because in a 1-tiered system, the likelihood of losing, especially when you have all these top tier teams and really strong players competing against people who don't necessarily have the same experience or the same training, it's a lot harder to incentivize people to go up against these supposedly intimidating juggernauts and try their hardest and potentially put up a good fight or get crushed. Either way, it makes the incentive for winning when you have a 2-tiered system a lot better, because you know that the people you're going up against are of similar levels of competition to you. Because even though I've never been to a nationals, I know just from like playing within the community around me, like I play for Macaulay, one of our closest competitors is NYU, and from playing NYU a lot, it's really, from my perspective, it's been a struggle to go up against these teams who have made names for themselves, who have competed for a long time, and go up against them and try and put up the best fight that I can. But when I go up against teams who I've heard from my teammates that are slightly closer in caliber, and I'm not saying my team is bad by any chance, I love my team, we're great, but when I was playing, we didn't have the same level of experience as a lot of the NYU players and a lot of the same practice and intensity. But going up against a team that is of a similar tier and a more visible skill level, comparable skill level, I feel like it could incentivize a lot of growth within a team. Because like you said, both of those teams that won their respective divisions became a lot more successful. And I feel like that's a great incentive for playing more Quidditch, which is always a good thing.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, y'all. So real quick, let's move on to reffing. So let's talk about kind of how college teams and y'all in specific kind of view reffing, like good, bad, hate it, love doing it. And yeah, so do you think reffing in college teams should increase? Should we leave it to the club players? What do you think? Eli, you want to start?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in my experience, I haven't had a lot of time reffing, even though this is my 3rd year playing Quidditch. And the whole idea of reffing does kind of scare me, because you're making big judgment calls that can effectively affect programs in some cases competitively. So just going out there is something that I haven't really had the best experience with. So I kind of tend to stay away from reffing, even though programs out in the West kind of encourage that because the West doesn't have as much, I guess, reffing experience as a lot of other places in the country. So just kind of going out there is something that I've been trying to ease myself into. But for college players, it's kind of like you want to leave it to the more experienced players because they know what they're doing and they've had a lot more time learning the rule sets and understanding how different situations are supposed to go.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, Eden, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I feel like personally speaking, like my opinion is that like it should like I feel like it should be up to like the members of like club teams rather than collegiate teams to do the reffing, but I also have like the perspective of I'm coming from a rather small team, and I remember like there's like some teammates who are like scared to like ref because like they're afraid to like make the wrong call. I know that like freshmen, we had a lot of freshmen last year, so like we weren't expecting them to like be able to get AR certified or snitch ref certified like early in the year. And then like there were also like just like sometimes it being like speaking from a person who had the leadership position in the team and making sure that the team had all of our ref requirements before nationals, like it's like wrangling cats sometimes trying to get enough players to like get the certifications and like hunting them down being like, have you taken your ref test yet? Have you passed your ref test yet? So like there are just like various reasons why like especially on a smaller team it can be harder to like put the job of providing a whole ref squad from the team.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that my team struggled with too. We're always like, did you take your rep test? Did you take your rep test? So that's a really interesting point. And thank you for bringing that up. And on that note too, even if you have a smaller team, do we feel like, when we have like that quota to fill, every team needs to have X many refs of this type, right? Are we doing that? Are college players doing that just to fill those quotas? Are we actually learning the test? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Megan, you want to speak on that?
Yes, excuse me. So just in my experience, I know that there are people who were just filling quotas, and I think that this can be really hurtful. But I also do think that college players should at least get experience reffing, because if we don't have any college players reffing, we're not going to be able to have people in the future in community who know what they're doing. But I think that we should like prioritize, like make a culture of like wanting to know the rules, wanting to know what's going on, instead of like it be more of an honor to be a ref instead of like, oh, not me, I don't want to do it, you're like nose goes or whatever. But I think maybe have collegiate players like ref less critical games and maybe like watch, or have a program where maybe they can like get more experience from like watching or shadowing experienced people. But yeah, I definitely think that there needs to be some sort of something to incentivize people, or just even having like a culture of appreciation for the rules.
Definitely.
Before you move on, Megan, because you sort of hit exactly what Alberto Coronado asked in the question. Does the panel have much experience with mentor-mentee relationships with players or coaches outside of their own team, such as people that can help train and teach them about the ref tests instead of just reminding them to take it? I feel like you were hinting at that. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit or answer the question essentially.
Right. So with my experience, people started to graduate out really quickly who had experience, and it was a lot of current players who didn't know what was going on, scrambling to like, we need to take this test, because we have to meet the requirements. But I do think if there are people who or even if I was a freshman and knew that this was something, like I had no clue, nobody talked about it to me until they were looking for people to ref. So I do think if maybe we prioritize a mentor-mentee relationship, this could improve significantly.
Yeah, Jonathan, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm very new to Quidditch, as I've already made clear. And when my team went to tournaments, there was, from my perspective, there was a consistent need for more reps. And there was always a little bit of added stress with, oh, do we have enough reps on our team to go out to all the other games playing in between our games so that we can still meet the requirements and help run this tournament? And I felt a little bit of like external pressure, not coming from anyone on my team in particular, not coaches or captains, just like seeing the amount of stress that was going on with the leadership on my team to have people like who can do repping. It incentivized me a bit to try taking the AR test myself, which I now regret because I only really learned the answers and I didn't really learn the rules as much. I play keeper. I don't really get beater rules that very much, but I found enough answers through the rulebook and through like little tidbits here and there to pass an AR test, even though I really do not understand like third bludger rules or particular things about specific kinds of contact. I know it to the extent where I'm not going to be breaking the rules in a game, but if I have to watch an interaction and determine was that a red card, a yellow card, a blue card, was that even illegal? That is not something I am prepared to do. But leaving that responsibility up to club players and community players, it's something that I feel is for disincentivizing college players to do it, because if we were to have enough people on our team who were readily willing and able to be ARs or snitch refs or lead assistant refs, I think they're called now, then there wouldn't be the same need to put on that level of baggage onto club players or community players. Because if we have people who are just interested in working on the rules at practice, we can have people who are interested in reffing for scrimmages, because as college players, we're very new to the sport. Especially me as a freshman, when I see my juniors and my seniors working like in scrimmages and at practice to practice their reffing skills, it shows that they've made a commitment to this sport, and that's not something all people are willing to do, because that's what it is. Reffing is a commitment to Quidditch. It's saying I am going to stick with this sport enough to learn the rule set well enough that I can practice it in an official game. And that's daunting for a lot of players. It was daunting for me. I never actually did the reffing, but I took the test anyway because I wanted to commit, and I'm happy I did.
I want to give Jack, we have like 1 minute left, so I want to make sure he gets his response in there. Yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so like Jonathan said, wanting to be like AR or LAR certified is definitely a commitment to Quidditch. And as someone who's HR certified, I wanted to make that commitment while I know that a lot of my other team members didn't want to. And I think a key to this is lowering the threshold for that commitment. To be like LAR certified or HR certified, you really have to like watch a lot of film, like study notes, and like watch, ask a lot of questions from other HRs. And I think if USQ or someone who's really knowledgeable in rules were to make like a AR or LAR rule handbook, like a virtual handbook that you could like watch videos of complex beater interactions, that would definitely make it easier for people to want to take that commitment.
Awesome. I have so many other questions and stuff here, but I think we're going to be running out of time. So yeah, there's a lot of feedback in the chat. There's a couple questions that we haven't answered. If you guys want to take a moment to, sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background, I apologize, but there's a couple questions left there. If any of you panelists want to go back and just type out an answer for them, that'd be great. But otherwise, I think this is, yeah, never apologize for dogs. Thanks, Mary. I want to really say I appreciate you guys all joining the panel. There's so much more conversation we could have. We went through half the questions that I have. I think it's great to hear the collegiate experience, the perspective. Linnea, I know I talk so much. I'm so sorry. I appreciate you joining this. You're also a college player, right?
Yeah.
So I think if I could just have one takeaway for you and for any college players that are listening, please participate in those Facebook groups. You have just as valid a voice as anyone else. I look forward. I get excited when I hear those. That's why we put this together. So thank everyone here, everyone in the chat who is here listening. And I encourage everyone to participate. Be friendly. Please be friendly. And I guess that wraps it up for us. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, definitely. And we really want to continue this discussion on Slack. I know we are definitely running out of time and we need to hop off, but definitely if you have any more questions, post them in the Slack. We'll make sure all of our panelists are in the Slack to be able to answer them. And if any other college players are listening, participate in those too, because we want to hear your opinions. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for having me. See y'all later.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you for the opportunity for being part of this panel.
Thank you all so much. Really, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been so fun.
Thanks, guys.